Out. All right, thank you, Gary. Thank you. Welcome back to the conversation that Gary Ingram of Transforming Congregations has with us on this topic of such or some of you. Gary, you had left off, you talked about you and your wife started a ministry called Love and Truth Network. Give us some of that background as well. You were asked to lead Transforming Congregations, so give us some of that background as well in terms of ministry.
Sure. So after being on staff at the church for 12 years in upstate New York, my wife and I formed Love and Truth Network, and it's become its own 501c3 nonprofit. And the focus of that ministry isn't so much about working with individuals who may be dealing with sexual addiction or pornography addiction or other relational issues or even LGBTQ issues. But our main focus is on equipping the church. So how can the church really, we believe that environments are huge, that we believe that counseling is really important, those kinds of opportunities. My wife is a licensed counselor, Christian counselor, and so we certainly believe in that. However, counseling, while it's essential for some people to work through trauma and a number of other things, what's also very, very important is the environment that we are living in the environment that we're experiencing within the church. And so our main emphasis in ministry, both for Love and Truth Network as well as Transforming Congregations, is helping to equip pastors and leadership teams and churches on how to develop environments within their church that are environments of safety and transformation. It's not enough to just be safe, but Jesus transforms lives. And so we want to see that transformation happening in people's lives. Of course, we cannot put people on a conveyor belt of how quickly transformation looks and exactly what it looks like, but transformation does occur. That's a normal part of life. And so we want to be a part of supporting that. So we really equip the church on how to effectively minister in those areas. And that's really what both ministries are primarily about. We do that through our writings, through ministry updates. We do that through our websites. We do that through the teachings, the online video curriculum that we're uploading. We also do that through in-person weekend ministry events and conferences and things of that nature.
So if I am a leader at a church, or a pastor at a church, and this is an issue that human sexuality, which has been a topic in the church, in the United Methodist Church specifically,
Yeah.
and you want a full spectrum of the what the scripture says, as well as ministry in terms of even dealing with psychology. Uh, is that what you're offering? Is that
Yeah,
what?
yes. So definitely preaching and teaching that flows out of scripture, as well as the scientific and research-based information around these topics, and then also the narrative of our own story. And the story of, I mean, my wife and I know hundreds of people by name. We know them, we know their families that have pursued Jesus out of an LGBTQ identity and behavior, and have really embraced the cross and have embraced new life in him, and have embraced really their place within important and vital kingdom service and work. So so we bring all of that to bear in our discussions with leaders. I love the thing I love probably the most is working with and training leaders, opening up the topic and answering questions, doing Q&A, whether that's over a video call or it's in person. Just really enjoy those opportunities to equip pastors, because, and I say enjoy, which may sound to somebody like an odd word to use in conjunction with sexuality or sexual brokenness, but the truth is there is a ton of hope that Jesus gives us, that the Gospels give us, that the Bible gives us. There's so much hope for redemption. As you said, the leading title of what this particular workshop or summit or whatever we're doing here right now is On Such Were Some of You. And so there's so much hope that we don't have to be bound by all that right now does bind us. And so we really want to to work with churches, as I said. And here's the thing is, every place is talking about sexuality. They're talking about identity. They're talking about all kinds of things. And yet the one institution that's saying very little or almost nothing is the church. And it's the one place that actually has the answers. And so we want to really unbridle the church to not just spout off all kinds of ideas or platitudes, but rather, far more importantly, we want the church to have real, hard-won, loving, and grace-filled answers for people who are struggling and hurting. The last thing they need is to get kicked by the church. I've been there. It's not fun to be on the receiving end of that. And we want to help churches become equipped in, again, that balance, not balance, that the tension of what it means to love well, but to love in truth.
Let me ask you one last question. In this particular segment, I can hear skeptics and cynics who are watching this asking about, well, does this ministry do conversion therapy? Do they pray the gay away? What, and you, I don't know if this is when you want to answer right now, but what is or later in our talk, what is your methodology in terms of creating this safe, grace-filled environment for transformation?
Sure, the great question. So we're not doing therapy per se at all. We would, as I said, my wife is a licensed counselor, but she doesn't work for the organization either, and she works on a broader scale than just on these issues. So, but no, we certainly would not. When people think of conversion therapy, when that phrase comes up, what most people think of is some kind of coercion. They think of electroshock therapy. They think of shaming. They think of really negative ways of trying to somehow curb or change somebody's sexual orientation. Well, those are utterly ridiculous. Those are, I think that some of that was employed many, many years ago. And it's disgusting that people had endured that kind of garbage. But what is being billed today as conversion therapy and being banned is talk therapy. And I have a number of pastors and even professional colleagues that I know who are willing to just sit down in a very loving and grace-filled way when someone approaches them and says, hey, I'm struggling with this. And I don't, for example, I know people, and myself, I would be one of them, but I know others besides myself who have experienced really severe sexual abuse and ongoing sexual abuse by, I'm thinking of one person in particular, of a man who experienced as a boy sexual abuse that happened multiple times by an much older boy, and in this case, a man. And this person that I'm thinking of has always desired to have a family, to be a dad, to be a husband to a woman, and yet struggles with same-sex attraction. Well, shouldn't that man be able to go and sit with a counselor and deal specifically with some of the issues he's experiencing in terms of same-sex attraction? They're desires he doesn't want, they are unwanted, and shouldn't he have the right? Why does self-determination stop at the door of LGBTQ or same-sex attraction? Why should that stop at the door? Why shouldn't he be allowed to pursue his desires of reducing at least the level of attraction that he might have, and exploring the possibility of whether he could actually become a good husband for a woman? And so that's counseling, right? I mean, now I'm getting off track, I realize, but I'm trying to define what many people understand as conversion therapy, or another wording for that would be reparative therapy. Oftentimes they're used interchangeably. And although I will note that reparative therapy is actually a term that is trademarked by Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, and his son has taken over his practice, as I understand it. But that's really a trademark term, but it used to be conflated with conversion therapy. And again, today, conversion therapy is really anything. What the attempt is to ban and outlaw any attempt by a loving, gracious individual to walk alongside of someone who comes to them looking for help and support in dealing with their same-sex attraction or maybe gender confusion. And so we certainly believe that people have the right of self-determination. The people should have a right to seek out ways of exploring the possibility of, can I live in a way that's more congruent with my faith or my own desires for my life? And but as a ministry, again, we're not in any way practicing conversion therapy or any of those kind of things. Our main emphasis, again, is working with churches and pastors. For example, I said earlier, I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of some really negative things coming through the church. So we want to help equip the church. We believe that the church should be the most loving community there is to the LGBT community. Now, how do you define love? You know, that ultimately is, I say that now, and people might say, oh yeah, that's great, or oh, that's a bunch of crap because the church isn't loving at all toward the LGBT community. The only thing that's loving, some people would say, is full celebration of LGBT identity. And what I would say is, well, no, actually, biblically, love would be desiring the best for another person. And so and the best for another person is not what I desire for them necessarily, or what they desire for themselves. I know there's been plenty of times in my own life when I've desired some things that were really, really destructive for me. And sometimes I reaped the sowing that I did toward that destruction in different ways in my life. And other times my parents stepped in, or someone stepped in to halt, to redirect me, and that was a huge salvation. So the idea of love here would be, I desire the best for someone, and the best is, how has God designed them? That's really the question. And what does God desire for them? He's the creator, he's the author, and he's the one who understands how he's wired us. And so to love someone well means that we love them according to the way of the creator's design. And so that really flies in the face of a lot of popular ideas these days, both in culture and sadly within the church too. And so we're working to equip the church on how to love well, how to love lavishly. And at the same time, also, here's the other thing, and I'll mention this a little bit later too, but we don't lead off with a message that's directed and pointed at the LGBT community. We lead off and talk a lot about heterosexual sexual brokenness within the church, because it is a massive issue. And I've already addressed that in one of these other talks, so I don't need to get into that extensively. But I do always want to say, look, we're not here as a ministry to like shine a spotlight at the LGBT community and say, oh, all the problems that, the church has, the world. No, honestly, the more foundational brokenness that's in the church that's been largely ignored is heterosexual sexual brokenness. Pornography addiction is rampant in the church. And so we lead with that reality, but we're inviting people who experience, as I have, and still, on occasion still do, same-sex attraction. We're inviting people to walk together toward Jesus in whatever area of brokenness they're struggling with. And we can do a whole lot better being together in this process than being separated in isolation and shame.
Thank you, Garry, for that. And we're going to take a break. But before we go, I might just editorialize real quick. Martin Luther King Jr. also believed in an advice column that he had in Ebony magazine that he told a young boy who had sexual attraction to other young boys. He gave him some counsel that was biblical, and it might not be well received. It might also be banned or labeled conversion therapy. Just for the record, I actually put that link to that article on this segment of the YouTube. But we'll be right back, and we're going to talk more about such were some of you.